I'm so pleased to be joined on 24 Hours Nothing But Net on the live stream with Rick Hayduk, who is the owner and founder of the Shepherd Hotel. Rick is family because Rick employs my guy Frankie, and another 30 or 40% of the hotel's employment staff are people with intellectual or physical disability. Rick, you have an incredible story to share, and I'm so glad that you are giving us some of your time to do so.
Oh, happy to be here, Debbie.
Listen, man, you're like a rock star in Clemson. You know, all of a sudden there's this beautiful hotel that pops up on College Ave, and it is definitely an eye catcher because it's so unique and different, not just in concept, but in setting. Tell us where the whole idea came from, and just give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Well, in a nutshell, I've been in the hotel business for over 30 years, primarily resorts, from Europe to California. And 17 plus years ago, we were blessed with our third daughter with Down syndrome. And I think as any parent with a special needs child, you know, at that very minute, you're like, oh my gosh, what about tomorrow? And then when that thought settles in, it like travels to, oh my gosh, what happens when they graduate high school? Because, you know, the IEPs and the whole process, it's kind of structured. So you feel kind of good, you get them in the right environment. And then it's like they get to that high school 18, 19, 20, 21 certificate of completion, and you start panicking. So we're blessed here in Clemson with the Clemson Life program, and many universities now are adopting the inclusionary post-secondary education program, which is awesome. But when my daughter was born, I went through that same thinking process as all of us do. And I realized hospitality is a really good industry to incorporate individuals with disabilities. Because, I mean, let's face it, you don't have to go to Harvard to work in a hotel. So from that standpoint, I was in South Florida, and we started working with great organizations like Goodwill, Project Search, and some of the, you know, other local regional groups. And we would employ them, we would teach them hospitality. And then my oldest daughter went to Clemson, graduated in 13. And it was the first year of this program called Clemson Life. There's an 11-year difference between her and her sister with Down syndrome. So she started volunteering for Clemson Life, and my wife and I learned about it. So all of a sudden, you know, I'm working with Goodwill and Project Search and various organizations. And I just said to myself, you know, what would be like so satisfying for me would be to go to a place like Clemson, partner with that life program, and start teaching hospitality to the life students. And in our case, because of the size of our hotels, we have to tap into the local market, or could tap into the local market. So in essence, about 30% of our staff are individuals with disabilities. It's a combination of current Clemson Life students, where it's part of their curriculum, Clemson Life alumni, and then we also have locals in the community. So in essence, it's a combination of teaching, training, and gainful employment for people with disabilities. So this whole idea came about 4 years ago. And in a nutshell, I happened to be working at a resort in South Florida. We employed people with disabilities in a very small percentage there. And one in in chugged a boat where everyone was wearing the purple and orange. And it was Dabo Sweeney. So Dabo and I struck up a friendship. This is when my oldest daughter was at Clemson. And then he put me in touch with, you know, Dabo is just like all coaches, right? They're just the quintessential networkers. So Dabo introduces me to another buddy who actually played for Clemson in the 1980s. He happened to be a developer out of Charlotte. And I pitched him the idea. He was entrenched in the Clemson community. He was a developer. And you talk about just divine intervention on a project. I had pitched this idea to him on the Boston College weekend 4 years ago about either securing an existing hotel and renovating it, or maybe doing a new build, partnering with Clemson Life. And I'm not kidding you. When you talk about divine intervention, as we were in downtown Clemson, we were in front of a bank building that he had bought 3 years ago. And he had said, that's where that hotel is going to go. And I said, what are you talking about? I said, that's a bank. He said, I bought it 3 years ago. This community needs a hotel. I want to be a part of what you're doing. So that was that 4 years ago. And here we are today. We've been open 7 months. About 30% of our staff, 30+% of our staff are these awesome individuals. And we're teaching hospitality and providing a hospitality need for the Clemson community.
Rick, you're a hero to families like ours because you had a concept and you had the means and the resources, and you just knew that you could do a little bit more to make a difference. And you have done that tenfold, maybe 100-fold in the Clemson community. I speak from experience. I know how valuable it has been for Frankie to be one of your employees and what it has meant to his total well-being, every aspect of it, from the responsibility that comes with managing a job and a schedule, being on time, being accountable, being a part of a team, because you've created a culture of team inside the hotel. Tell us what that's like for those that maybe haven't been to the hotel. What's the experience like when you walk in the door?
Well, it's a small hotel. I mean, we really put the square peg in the proverbial circle hole in this location. I mean, we were downtown. There was a single-story bank with surface parking, and we dropped in a 6-story hotel. So it's got 67 rooms, a restaurant, a bar on the 3rd floor, rooftop space. But the cool thing is we started off with the intention, like right out of the gate, the whole idea was, one, employ people with disabilities, partner with Clemson Live, tap into the local community, give meaningful employment. Oh, and by the way, now let's figure out what type of hotel we're going to build. And the designer that ended up just doing the hotel for us, she totally got it. She's from Florida, and she and her team came up and they did what we call, we all know, the coaching staffs, right? You go through the season, you go to the off season, there's always some changes in the coaching staff. They go through an immersion, right? And Clemson football, I think, is recently gone through that. We went through an immersion with the interior designer, and she left understanding what Clemson is. And you hear about this Clemson family. And by the way, we're looking at Shepherd Hotel #2 on the campus of South Carolina, where they have a life program as well. And we're looking at another location in North Carolina. But the model is, ingratiating yourself with the university and their life program. But from the standpoint, it's a small hotel. And if you just do the math, you walk in at, people check out 11. People check in, 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening time. So usually the middle of the day in a hotel, it's dead. So we dropped the restaurant right smack in the middle of the lobby. The other thing is our restaurant model. We devised it such that, again, we can use the Clemson Live students as food runners and bussers. And so again, that's how we really have those very high numbers on our team between the restaurant and the hotel. But the whole idea is you walk into this hotel, you see our unique and special team, serving food in the lobby, over there checking guests in. There's a hustle and bustle. There's an energy vibe that we wanted and we set out to do. But from a design perspective, throughout the building, there are ties to our special needs community, such as in the lobby, over by the welcome. We don't even have a front desk. We call it the welcome table. Mm-hmm. Right next to it, we have a retail area where over half the items that are on sale are made by people with disabilities, including Clemson Life alumni. Some make jewelry, some make botanicals, some make candles. So we sell that. And so the whole idea was you have this, this vibe and this energy. And I had said from minute one with my partner, the developer's name is Rich Davies. I said, Rich, this is not a bed and this is not a plate of food. We want guests to leave inspired, meaning like humanity at its finest, because you're seeing these incredible human beings interacting with everybody. And by the way, it was as much of a challenge to select those without disabilities because they had to be a part of this team. They had to have that, heart, the compassion, the tolerance, the patience to work with everybody. So that was as much a challenge as it was, what skill set do you have? Kid with Down syndrome, someone with autism, how do we make it all work? But to maybe wrap up your question, Debbie, the whole idea is like you're coming in and you're just feeling something in this hotel, from the design, from the energy, Yeah, right down to the music that we've selected. I mean, there's some Christian music worked in, so there's just like this high upbeat vibe, and every part of that experience was thought through, intentional, and meticulous.
I absolutely have enjoyed every aspect of the hotel to this point. I have not been there for dinner yet, but I'm excited about that. And the menu is incredible. It's unique and different. It has a different spice to it to awaken all your different palate. And it's just amazing to me when you go in there. And I do see the vibe. I see the smiles. I see the uptick. I see how happy people are when a person from Clemson Life or a grad or you know, Frankie delivers a plate of food to somebody. They're so grateful. They have a smile, and that's, you don't always get that in every place you go or around food service. And it's really uplifting. I can't imagine that there has been any problems or issues or anything. I think it's just a part of how special and unique Clemson is in general, and the community and the safety and the security of that whole setting. And then this beautiful, gorgeous hotel, which I call it's an adult place to have a drink, right? If you're on College Ave, there are all kinds of college bars, and I call it Stickyville. Like during my day in college, I went to Stickyville, every bar on Hillsborough Street in Raleigh, and you know, you sit down, everything's sticky. But when you go to this beautiful setting, and you can go up on the rooftop, or you can go to the third floor to the Thomas, and you can have a drink, and you can overlook the city, and you can see from the rooftop all of Clemson. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It's unique and unlike anything else. It's time had definitely come, and for you to create this model, Rick, it's just off the charts. I mean, it's just so good. The name, the Shepherd Hotel. Tell us about that.
Well, that was again, God wink number 25. We were struggling to name the hotel because, as anybody knows, you're dealing with trademarks. You're dealing with someone can spin the name on a negative basis, you know, especially in this world of DEI that we live in right now. We had to make sure that we just went right down the middle of the fairway. But at the same time, we unabashedly know who we are and what we stand for. So we were struggling with a name. And oddly enough, Dabo, who again is a voracious reader of leadership books and culture and so forth, he had sent some books out to his circle, of which my partner was one of them. And then my partner sent it out to his. You know, it's kind of like that butterfly effect where, you know, all of a sudden this book gets circulated because Dabo sent it out first. And I read it. It's called The Way of the Shepherd. And it's a leadership book that simply reads, kid was graduating with an MBA from the University of Texas, goes up to his professor. He's going to go work for General Dynamics. And he says, I've never led people in my life. I don't know what to do. And he says, if you're willing to spend the next 6 Saturdays with me, I'll teach you leadership. And oddly enough, the professor had a side hustle as a sheep farmer. So he was using the metaphor of the sheep. There's a lot of biblical undertones. So my partner sent me the book, and I called him up within a couple hours. I said, this is it. He said, what? I said, the shepherd. And you can hear that pause of like, oh my gosh, you're right. And there it was. I mean, just such a perfect name for what we're trying to do. And oddly enough, I can tell you that so many guests say, we get it. Your unique staff are not the sheep, we are.
Oh, that is just so powerful. And I'm just feeling the vibe I get in the building and watching what takes place from all the different levels of employment that you have in the building and the capabilities. And you have found a way inside team. I think one of the things that you're talking about leadership, Rick, and you certainly are clearly an incredible leader in this space and beyond. What are a couple of the really important leadership tips that you would give about putting together a concept and seeing it come to fruition?
You know, oddly enough, despite the fact that we're dealing with some, special individuals, it's kind of leadership 101. You've got to love what you're doing. You've got, in a people intensive business that we're in, you have got to have this this off the charts love for those who you serve, which is twofold. It's the team, and it's your customer, your guests. And yes, we're producing a product. We have to have great beds, clean rooms, wonderful food, perfectly prepared cocktails. That's not the product. I mean, the product is really this experiential thing. And by the way, if you look at the economy today in a post-COVID world, what's doing well? It's experiences. So your product has to be right. But from a leadership standpoint, when you're trying to put all this together, I call it the technical versus the intangible, where you've got to get your technical right. There's no doubt about that. I mean, everything's got to be clean and prepared to all specifications. But when you're talking about like this vibe, this energy, this inspiration that we're looking to deliver as our end product, it really does boil down to the people, the processes. And I would really say that, if anybody's looking, whether it's a Biddy and Bose or something like that, you just have to have it in your heart and love and almost like you put that first. It's kind of like the Saban, believe in the process and the results will come out. If you have that, that patient, by the way, patience is number one. I mean, all of us know as parents, if you have to tell your able-bodied, able-minded teenager to do something twice, you've got to tell, I've got to tell my Down syndrome kid. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I've got two with Down syndrome. One is by the book. Tell her once, it's done. The other one, 20, 25, and it might sink in. So I got both ends of the spectrum, but you've got to have the patience, tolerance, compassion, and love. And it will manifest itself in a great end product. But that's just leadership 101. I mean, even if you're working in private equity, you love on your people, they're going to deliver great results.
Well, Frankie absolutely loves you, and he loves Donna and Takia and Dion, and I could go on and on naming every member of your staff, including the Delish sisters, who I feel like I know personally and do know, because that's the kind of welcoming feeling you get when you walk in. And as a parent, you're asking someone to help your child in a lot of different spaces and a lot of different responsibility. And I should say young adult, really, because he's a young man now. But, Frankie always says, Mr. Rick this, Mr. Rick that. And I'm just guessing that everyone sort of says that around the hotel, Mr. Rick this, Mr. Rick. But when you evaluate Frankie as an employee, because he's going to be watching this, so you're going to give a chance to evaluate Frankie in front of the whole world, Frankie and his team. How would you say they're doing so far in the first 7 months of the hotel?
One, I would say we believe, like if you were to break down our organization, now take a step back and just say, okay, you're a hotel organization. Our mantra is leave people in places better than you found them. So when we take a look at Frankie is a different man today than he was when he started for us. Mm-hmm. It's a combination of what he's worked on as a man, as himself, and what we have worked on with him and providing him feedback. I would also say that Frankie has, just like all of our team, have unique abilities. Frankie is hysterical. He has a magnetic personality. So I've worked in organizations where someone might try to curb that and say, hey, calm it down, chill it down, especially in, higher end hospitality. We're on the other end of the spectrum, like, no, man, go at it. So he brings, excitement to it, to what we do. So Frankie, to me, is kind of like in the middle of the fairway of so many of the team members that have come to work for us, where I can wholeheartedly say they, as people, as individuals, as human beings, as hospitality workers, are that much different than when they started, all for the better. And Debbie, maybe a question that you're not answering that I learned that I had no idea about it. So I had a lot of parents come up to me, and I didn't even think about this, who had said, my son was working at the grocery store, was working, at a restaurant, bussing tables. But it's different here because they get to work amongst not only their peer group, but as I alluded to a couple minutes ago, where we were so selective in the other individual, the other 70% of the workforce, so that everyone would come together. So 1 + 1 = 3. And I never thought about that. I'm like, wow, you know, you're right. If you're that, like where I started, you're that parent saying, okay, you know, I live in this small community. My Down syndrome kid finishes high school. I hope that the grocery store will let him bag groceries. That's what you kind of hope for, that the bar is so darn low. It's sad. But in this case, the parents are telling me they get to work amongst their friends. And their friends are not just, you know, special needs. Their friends are also others. So I didn't put that together. So that's like an unintended benefit. But like Frankie to me is a great example where this big personality comes in. And I will tell you this though, when we had my daughter, I was working in the Bahamas and I was in an airport in, I think it was Miami, and she was 2 weeks old, walked up to a family that I saw that had a boy with Down syndrome. And I think 2, maybe 3 other siblings. And I walked up to him and said, hey, just like you guys just had a kid with Down syndrome. What's the best advice that you could give me? They started laughing at me. I said, what's so funny? They said, simple, treat her normal. We treat Frankie and all of the team, not only normal, we give them the tough love when they need it. We keep, you know, we've got guardrails. And what's really cool is I think, you know, when they're younger and they're in high school, they get away with a lot. We know it.
Yes,
You'll get, my second daughter was a travel softball. We went all over the state of Florida. My daughter all of a sudden started getting bigger and bigger. And like, what's going on? We didn't know that my daughter with Down syndrome would go to the snack bar while we're watching the other daughter's game, and they would give her food. Didn't have to pay for it. Everyone was just giving her food. They get away with a lot. We here in the hotel, there's a lot of tough love because, I mean, everybody seems to have, listen, with Down syndrome, autism, ADHD, whatever it might be, to kind of keep them in that lane has been one of the bigger challenges, but we are relentless. So Frankie is one of those guys that this big personality, it's up to him. He would just work the restaurant all day, meaning work the tables, talk to everybody, especially the girls. Frankie knows the routine, and he also knows what he can get away with. We put him back in line, and we are at the stage now with him and so many. He knows what is required. He knows what the standards are. And I think that's what makes me extremely proud with a guy like Frankie is I think, again, as he comes home to you, Debbie, that I would hope that there is, you know what, I think this hotel is good for him.
Oh, 100%. It has changed the complete outlook for not just Frankie, but our whole family. And there's so many emotions, as we know, as parents, when you have a child with special needs and when you have a child with Down syndrome. But the one emotion that I feel and I see every time I'm around Frankie is pride. And I wasn't sure that would ever be one that we would have ever put together with him or for our family, how much pride we have and how, you know, how proud we are of what he has done. We've always been proud of him, but to see him feel the pride himself and accomplishment, because you have been such an incredible leader in this space, Rick, and families like mine are forever indebted. And that's part of the reason why we're doing this fundraiser for Special Olympics, is because we know that you need healthy employees and you need employees that are making healthy lifestyle choices, and sport definitely helps in that regard. So in the full total well-being of any person with special needs like Frankie or like families like ours, this is such an important topic for discussion. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time, for your leadership, for your shepherd and guidance, and allowing this experience to happen at a special place like Clemson, Rick.
Well, thank you for that, Debbie. And you know, again, I know I'm the one sitting in front of you today, but we have an amazing leadership team. Yes, I think if the only thing that I have done right is handpicked some incredible human beings that are on this same path that we and the same desire and mission and purpose-driven organization that we're on. And Lord willing, we'll be able to take it to, like I said, USC and maybe some other schools and provide more training and meaningful employment for some awesome people.
Well, you know, I've been sharing the good word across the athletic landscape. And I think as more people become familiar and learn that when you've been going to Clemson for a long time and you go and you have your same routine, this is really a jolt to the system because it's so exceptional and incredibly different and unique and such a great representation of what Clemson really is all about. And I'm grateful for your time, and I'm grateful for your incredible leadership, Rick. So thank you to you and your team for everything you've done.
Well, thanks, Debbie, and thanks for the few minutes here today to spread the word to our community. So thank you.